Thank you. Please note that this meeting is... Oh, do you want to start again? Yeah.
Apologies. For anyone on the live feed, you would have just watched us or me miming, so I will try that again. Good evening and welcome to this March meeting of the Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting. And we're going to kick off with the housekeeping.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council's website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of your nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point in the front car park of this building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sinead. And do we have any apologies for this evening, please?
Thank you. Yes, we've received apologies from Councillor Olivia Brown and Councillor Peter Cooper.
Thank you very much. And do we have any substitutes?
Yes, we have Councillor Michael Tarling substituting for Councillor Olivia Brown and Councillor Patrick Canavan substituting for Councillor Peter Cooper.
Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. We haven't received any declarations. Does anybody have anything that they need to add to that this evening? No, thank you very much. In that case, I'm going to move on to confirmation of the minutes. Again, any comments or any amendments to those minutes? Otherwise, can I accept them as a true record? Thank you very much. That's agreed. I will sign them later. Thank you. And then we move on to our recommendation tracker. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. That's something that's now in the agenda every time. It's true of all ONS committees. And if nobody has anything to raise, I just wanted to note, actually, oh yeah, sorry, we've got some responses in there from the we've got 55. I've got a note against 55 and 56 that we're probably just coming up to the 2 months where we have a response from the Cabinet. It's 2 months, isn't it, for a response from Cabinet? Yes, so we just need to make sure that we make a note of that. And number 12 we have captured as an action for the committee forward plan. Thank you. Right, and then we've got, just swapping between, public issues. Actually, just want to, yeah, as part of that, the performance report, I'm just trying to think where that comes. Oh, I'm sorry, it's there. Apologies, that's me mixing myself up. Public issues. Sinead, could you please take us through the public issues that we have?
Yes, we've received 2 public questions from Adam Sofianos, who is unable to attend tonight, so has asked Democratic Services to read them out on his behalf, and that's me. So the first question is regarding agenda item 9, send improvement. Recently, the government published its plans for education reform. The SEND proposals have caused alarm amongst educators, charities, campaign groups and families. These proposals have also provoked a formal judicial review challenge. Families are particularly fearful of the threat to slash the number of children receiving statutory protection, the possible removal of appeal rights, and the move to give schools liability for both the delivery and costs of most support, which may incentivise the restriction of services. While these plans offer financial breathing space for councils, the effect on support for disadvantaged children nationally could be a problem, making an underperforming service even worse. The government consultation runs until the 18th of May. How does the council intend to respond, and how will it engage with families and local groups and councillors to ensure its response is reflective of the many concerns being raised?
Thank you, Sinead. Going to turn to our portfolio holder, Councillor Richard Burton, for a response.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adam, as always, for the question. The Council is taking the Government's consultation on SEND reforms very seriously, and we are ensuring that our response is informed by the voices and experience of our local area. To support this, we have issued a survey to all schools across BCP area, as well as to our local area system leadership group, which includes key partners such as the Parent Carer Forum, Parent Carers Together. In addition, our Parent Carer Forum has circulated targeted questions to parents and carers to make sure, sorry, my screen's just moved, to make sure families are able to share their views directly. We will now bring this feedback together to help shape a comprehensive council response to the consultation. This will reflect a range of concerns and perspectives raised locally. We also want to emphasise that it will be important for all partners, including parents and carers, to respond individually to the national consultation so that their voices are heard as part of the wider national picture. Through this approach, we aim to ensure that the BCP submission is fully informed, balanced and reflective of those who will be most affected by the proposed reforms.
Thank you. And I just wanted to also say, for Adam and anyone else's benefit, that we have as a standing invitation now to the relevant committee meeting a representative from Parent Carers Together. Tonight we have Pearl with us, and so we are constantly asking. I know that this is talking about the SEND consultation, but in general, as well as part of our scrutiny efforts at BCP, we do have that representation as well. So we are listening as much as we can. Sinead.
So this is Adam's second question regarding agenda item 13, the SEN inspection report. Ofsted is not the only party with an interest in SEN performance. During 2024, the Council was repeatedly asked at this committee to publish regular updated performance statistics. Eventually, a data set began to be published on the local offer microsite. However, at the time of submitting this question, the most recent data available was for July 2025. There are 7 months outstanding. How will the Council make this missing data available, and will it keep its previous promise to continue to publish SEND performance data in the future?
So thank you, Chair, and thank you again, Adam, for your question. You're absolutely right to highlight the importance of transparency around our SEND performance data. And I would want to acknowledge that the Council has not kept this data set as up to date as it should have been. This is a miss on our part, and we are committed to putting this right. We recognise that regular publication of performance information is essential, not just for this committee, but for families, partners and the wider community who rely on this data to understand how well the system is working. We are now taking steps to bring the data set fully up to date on the local offer website. We are also in the process of co-producing a fully refreshed local offer, and this will be an opportunity for us to consider what data we publish and how we best go about presenting it. Importantly, we will also put in place a clear and reliable process for ongoing updates to ensure that SEND performance data continues to be published regularly as previously committed. This will support better oversight, greater transparency and stronger accountability across the local area partnership. Thank you again for raising this. It is an important reminder of the standards we must meet.
Indeed, I'd like to echo that. Yes, data is the backbone of what we are trying to achieve here. So thank you very much for those questions, Adam. And that brings us, sadly, to the last update from our current members of the Youth Parliament. And we also have one of the deputies, Lily, with us as well. So over to Ryan and Elliot.
Thank you so much. And I also just wanted to thank you for your hospitality and giving us slightly longer to properly to celebrate what it is that we've done and talk about what's going to happen going forward. So just brief introductions. So as you all probably know by now, I'm Elliot. And here's Ryan, the members of Youth Parliament. We've also got Lily with us, who's been doing some valuable work, and she's our deputy member of Youth Parliament. But we figured that it wouldn't be right not to have her here to celebrate some of the work that she's been up to. Sadly, our other deputy, Ruth, could not make it, but Lily will touch upon what she's been working on and has worked upon as well. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. So when we got elected in, we had 4 different major campaigns. So Ryan's main campaign was around the knife crime. Lily, Ruth and I all wanted to discuss mental health as part of our campaigns. Ruth's major campaign was around youth homelessness, and I also had a campaign around student finance. And so I'm going to pass over to Lily, who's going to talk about youth homelessness and what Ruth's been up to there.
So Ruth was part of the Night Stop board until she left for uni, where she helped out facilitating sessions to seek young people's views, and this was included in the Night Stop's annual report. This campaign was unfortunately cut short when she had to leave for uni, though.
And then I'm also going to touch upon my student finance campaign briefly. So what I wanted to campaign on was around the issue of student loans, and I made some relevant contacts within Arts University Bournemouth and with the organisation Save the Student and some other organisations to kind of create a resource to increase education around the issue within local schools. Sadly, due to time constraint and wanting to focus on the mental health campaign, I ended up putting that on the back burner. But some of the work that I've done and kind of increasing advocacy around that, not just with the people I know locally, but with national decision makers and all of the people there, I am proud to say that I feel like I have really raised the issue. And some of the work that I'll discuss later on the Youth Select Committee, there's broad overlap with that, with the kind of issue of student finance. So I'm now going to pass back to Lily, who's going to discuss the mental health campaign.
So for the mental health campaign, we've been working on creating a training video for teachers to represent the real experiences of young people within BCP and their experience with mental health. So we started with a survey just having young people's views on mental health and their experiences of how it's treated. And this is what acted as the basis for our training video. Last week, we hosted a webinar for the launch of this training video as it's been completed. And we had mental health teams from the NHS and educators come in and attend this webinar. Overall, it went well. We received a lot of positive support from everyone, and one of the schools in particular showed quite strong interest in having this training included into their school. If we could go on to the next slide, there's a short clip of the webinar that we showed.
The extra one about the stages.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to go back to the stages? Or no? Leave it.
It's okay.
We'll show one of the stories here now.
Hi, we're members of BCP Youth Parliament. I'm Lily. And I'm Ruth. This project aims to share real stories of students' experiences who are struggling with their mental health within school. All responses are collected from surveys of young people in the area. We hope this presentation is impactful to all watching.
So we've kept out story 1 and just showing the stories because it contains quite sensitive topics and we didn't want to trigger anyone with these topics. But the whole webinar has been recorded and we are currently working on having it implemented into the CAMS Mental Health in Schools team for training the trainer. Thank you.
And now I'm going to talk about my rugby event, Rugby United, about tackling knife crime. And I'm happy to present to you guys the leaflets that went out during this event. And basically the intended purpose of this event was to spread awareness about knife crime as a whole, sort of break down the stigmas between the community and the police force, to sort of see them as someone to go to for help when in times of danger. And yeah, also to create a sort of community. I know personally that I play for Oak Medians, and I was met with such a sense of community, which is something that I really wanted to foster, and you know, try and help other kids help that feeling. So the people that attended were the local police force, and Andy, the superintendent for serious crime, as well as Tracy for Changes Are Made, in which she delivered a very powerful speech during the event, which I think really helped the kids sort of put it into perspective, the serious topic that we were talking about and trying to spread awareness about. In the leaflet, I tried to create the most cohesive and easy to read information, as well as some help from the Police Crime Commissioner team to really get the best statistics out to the children. And unfortunately, during the event, we only had one school show up, which is Oak Academy, but I think ultimately this sort of created the best experience for them. Really helped, put all the attention towards them, and helped them foster the best experience possible. So as a result of this event, you I know us as the NYP team, we gained a lot of useful um, and useful contacts, and helped relationships built between these powerful people, such as the police crime commissioner and Andy, from the superintendent. And I've recently been approached about a knife crime committee, which is very amazing. I think this event as a whole really helps me. And yeah. And oh yeah, and I've got a video about what happened.
Hello, I'm Ryan Cornish, a member of Youth Parliament, and I'm here at Oak Medians Rugby Club to set up for my Tackling Knife Crime Together event. I have the police force here today, and also have the Changes Are Made getting set up and ready for today, for the schools to come in.
Now I'm going to be talking about the House of Commons sitting that me and Elliot sat on. The first time, obviously, we were very unfortunate to not be able to speak. But the second time around, we actually both spoke, which is really great for, getting our point across. And personally, I spoke about knife crime, and I felt it very important to speak about the local level and what I've been doing and what I've been trying to do to carry forward this message of knife crime, around awareness of knife crime. And I think my experiences in the overview and scrutiny panel has definitely helped with the nerves, speaking in front of everyone. Although I do think it was much more scary in the Houses of Commons. But yeah, I think mainly that, my passion for this topic and the fact that I was able to speak on it at a national level really helped me to create an emotional speech that I think really got carried forward a very useful message to many people. And I also spoke about, Changes Are Made, and Tracy during that speech, just to help it put into perspective and bring, a local level to a national picture. Yeah.
And then I also got the chance to speak. So before the House of Commons sitting, I did a youth focus group with our youth forum, and we went through all of the points that were going to be discussed. One of the points that came up was around unpaid internships and how it kind of creates a two-tiered system in which those who aren't fortunate enough to be able to to be able to live when doing unpaid work, how it means that they're disproportionately affected, and it means it's much, much harder for them to get into the world of work. And I spoke about that, and that got some really positive feedback afterwards. There was a lot of interest in it following the sitting, and there was a lot of social media buzz with my speech being included in a kind of compilation of speeches that got put by Politics UK, a Twitter page, on all of their social media, and that it got millions of views, and it really did get the message out there around what our youth forum was talking about and the young people in our area. And so I was really happy to see that. And then also at a national picture, I've been on the Youth Select Committee. So the Youth Select Committee is a formal parliamentary committee. There I proposed the idea of standardising the PSHE curriculum due to conversations that I had with young people, noticing how different PSHE was between different schools, and that got some really positive feedback from the other people who were on the committee, and after a vote, they ended up adopting my idea for it. So we've been up in the House of Commons taking evidence. We've had a call with the Minister for School Standards, in which we also took evidence for that. And I've just recently gotten in my inbox the finished version of the report, which I cannot share. That will be going out on the 25th of March, unless I want to be found for contempt of House, is what they were saying within the email, which I do not want to be found for. But that will be coming out in about 15 days' time, with a formal launch event taking place within the House of Commons, which I'm really excited for. And on the next slide, there's a short clip of me actually asking one of the questions, just so you can kind of see the procedure and how it all worked up in the House of Commons with the questioning. Thank you.
Can I just push that a little bit further? With this reliance on schools and certain external organisations and people to be providing the necessary training to these teachers, does that not increase the already current risk that there's going to be major differences between the level of PSHE education and the quality of PSHE education between different schools?
And so that there was the representative for the Department of Education, in which I got a lengthy response, which then got taken into consideration with the final report. And I've had a read through it, and I'm really proud of it, and I'm really excited to see the government's response for it, because just like any other select committee, they're legally obliged to say yes or no to every single one of our recommendations. And so hopefully it's actually going to bring around some real legislative change, both at a national picture, but within every single school, even the local ones. And so that brings us on to kind of what's next. Ryan, you wanted to...
Yeah, so first of all, I'd just like to express us as NYP's gratitude towards you all. As Elliot said, you all have been very accommodating, and whilst at sometimes confusing, it's been a great experience. Yeah, just the opportunity to get to weigh in on these issues is amazing in itself. And we hope that you'll carry on to invite the new NYPs into these overview and scrutiny panels, and help represent the youth on such key major issues. As I'm sure some of you saw, like that their campaigns were on things that they believe in passionately, and it was such a wide range of campaigns that I really need to have attention drawn to. And yeah, so as of last Friday, the votes for the new NYPs was 4,075, which is a lot, and it just shows the effect of NYPs and how many people actually care about their voices being heard across 14 different schools. Yeah, Elliot.
And I also just wanted to touch upon the more national picture. So as of right now, there's no kind of formal continuation of the Youth Parliament process. It's still up in the air at a national picture. So as members of Youth Parliament, we've been doing everything we can, from emailing the Speaker of the House, who has kind of asked for our input to kind of try and ensure that it will continue and to get our voices heard on that. But it's still up in the air. Hopefully soon we'll have some confirmation one way or another. But I think no matter what happens nationally, I think the most important part about our role is the local picture, because it is the people of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole who elected us, and it's the people of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole who we are to represent at a local and a national level. And so I think as the kind of the national stuff is still up in the air, I think it's just increasingly important to come in and weigh in on the local discussions like we have here. And yeah, I think the opportunity to be able to speak here on all of the kind of issues that come through this committee has been invaluable, both for us as people, but also hopefully in getting the voices of the young people from the local area out there. And so thank you all for how accommodating you've all been, for all three of us and Ruth as well, although sadly she can't be here, but thank you all. I think that's us done. So if there's any questions or anything, feel free. Thank you.
So to pick up from what Elliot just said, thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and yeah, hard to condense 2 years into, you know, a lot of hard work. I'm very aware of that. Any questions for our Michael?
Yeah, thank you very much, and you're a credit to this council and our area. Thank you very much. Just one thing is having seen the process, and there's quite a range of ages and abilities that come through through the selection procedure. Is there anything that you'd want to see changed? Anything we could do better for our youth parliament members or our youth council?
Well, I think whilst amazing the amount of votes that we've had recently, I think it would be very important that everyone here pushes more participation in this entire process, because the more representation and the more awareness about this process, the more effective it can be. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say, really, that getting the awareness out there.
I think for me, what I would like to say is every single councillor and member here has been utterly phenomenal in how they have worked with us, and it's been incredible. But what I would like to see is kind of getting the next members of Youth Parliament not just as something that takes place within Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny, but kind of wider, having every single councillor knowing about the members of Youth Parliament, having every single councillor, if they've got a young person in trouble, or if they've got something that there's another person that they can go to, and kind of ensuring that our voice is heard on a council-wide scale, just because I'm sure they would all be just as accommodating as all of you have been. So I suppose just getting the message out there as well, not just within the kind of the people within your constituency, but also with your fellow councillors, definitely. Thank you.
Just say, did you want to plug the event on Saturday or week Saturday?
Yeah, well, on Saturday 21st, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got the celebration event, so it's going to be a very similar presentation to this one from us, but where we're going to talk about what it is that we've been up to. There's going to be some awards for some local people, local young people who've done incredible things, and the next members of Youth Parliament are going to be announced, and we'd love to see as many people out there as possible, and can't wait to see who's going to get elected and what they're going to be doing. So it's exciting. Thank you.
Well, I will certainly be there. Emily.
Thank you, Sharon. I couldn't not speak to thank you and express my gratitude for your contributions over the last 2 years. I hope it's not condescending at all to say that you have so grown, like from those initial hustings when you sort of stood up there so bravely and shared your campaigns to the young people we see before us today. I feel so proud, and I should, but it's amazing the journey you've been on. And the thing I love is what was just touched upon there, that idea now that you've used your platform to inspire, to let other young people know that they do have a voice, that their opinions, their views, their voices matter. And it's not a question, but I'm going to make a commitment to you all. I'm going to continue to do everything I possibly can to engage with the young people in my ward to ensure that they know I'm here to represent them as well, be that going into schools, be that putting on youth surgeries, whatever I can do, because especially we think we're moving into a place now where votes are going to be at 16. You know, young people need to feel motivated to have their voices heard, because everything that's going on right now, everything we do in the council, everything that's done at government level, it's impacting your futures. And without your voices, we have to ask ourselves why. They should be core and central. So a commitment from me and a huge amount of thanks for everything you've done.
Oliver.
Just to add, you guys can run for elected office soon as well, and make sure that everyone in your forum is aware that, from 18 they can stand, that political parties won't say no to you just because you're 18. Each one of them wants candidates. They want people to run from as early age as possible. So don't be afraid of joining a party that represents you as a person, and suggesting that you could stand in council elections or anything like that. So just go for it. Yeah.
And you never know, we may see you back in the House of Commons. Any more questions? No. So I just wanted to say a few words on behalf of the committee. Emily's already been very erudite in expressing her gratitude to you, and I won't go on. Don't worry. I'm not a big speech maker, but I'm sure the rest of the committee would want to join me in thanking you most sincerely. It has been genuinely enlightening. You've asked some excellent questions. Sometimes the best questions of the evening have come from you guys. And you have shown commitment, resilience, and passion, which are the things that will take you through life in all areas of your lives. And to show those so consistently at such a young age is frankly heartening. I'm desperately maternal when it comes to you guys. It's ridiculous. I've got 3 sons and I've mostly dealt with Ryan and Elliot. And I can actually tell my own sons apart. But Lily, that extends to you. And Ruth, I'm on the board of Night Stop. I know, but I'm saying, Ruth, I'm on the board of Night Stop with her. So I had dealings with her as well. And no, it's actually a real shame that was cut short, because she was doing some very good work there. And again, her perspective was really important to the work of that particular charity. And I just wanted to say that you may not be, well, you won't be aware of this, but your names are actually permanently in the record of the Houses of Commons now, because you are in Hansard. Tom Hayes MP asked a question of the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, otherwise known as Darren Jones MP, just at the end of last week, asking him to frankly congratulate you and the work of all the MYPs in the country on the work that you have done. That's all 4 of you, so that's the MYPs and the deputies. And this is just a bit of what Darren Jones said in response. I join my honourable friend in congratulating his constituents. The Youth Parliament plays an important role in our democracy and in engaging young people in it. With Mr. Speaker's consent, it has the benefit of coming to this chamber to experience what it is like. The good news is that we have already had members of the Youth Parliament become members of Parliament as a consequence of their experience. It did not warn them off. We look forward to welcoming more of them in future generations. So actually, yes, the Youth Parliament has been raised in Parliament, and I thank Tom Hayes MP for doing that. And I also have a brief presentation for you that I wanted to give on behalf of the committee. I asked most of our local MPs if they would just write letters to thank you for your commitment and your work over the past 2 years. So if I may, I'd just like to present those to the 3 members that we have here. Right. Thank you very, very much for that. Honestly, your participation has been huge, and it's not over yet. It's not over yet. We've got plenty to do this evening. So, moving on to the thing I was trying to jump to earlier. Apologies. We have the corporate performance report, which has been included in our paperwork. And I just want to say this report has already been circulated. It's circulated between meetings because it's circulated as soon as it comes out, essentially. I just wanted to highlight one thing in it, though, just for the benefit of the committee. That you'll notice that one of the red markers on it, if for want of a better word, is around school exclusions. I have asked about that, and really, I mean, our role is always to seek assurance that things are being looked at. I'm actually told that our exclusions data is currently improving, which is a good thing, but it's been properly recorded within the performance report. I've also just recently been having discussions with the Audit and Governance Committee around the recording of risk, and just making sure that sort of loop is closed, for want of a better word, between Scrutiny and Audit and Governance who look at risk. And we will also be bringing the risk register into our papers for every meeting, just so that the committee can always have sight of what risks relate to children's. I mean, you can obviously look at all of them, but particularly look at the ones that pertain to children's. So it's just to let the committee, or make the committee aware that that aspect of our scrutiny is being looked at and is being covered off. Okay. Anybody got any questions on that? No. Thank you. Right, so we'll go to our substantive items of business, and we're beginning this evening. Want to welcome John Coughlin, who has, I've said that correctly, haven't I? Perfect, wonderful. It's on our SEND improvement journey. We recently had our Ofsted inspection report, which is later on in the agenda as an item of information because it came out about a month ago. But I'm going to ask John to just open with some remarks, and then we can ask questions. And it may well be that we want to get into some of that information. And he was chairing the SEND Improvement Board, or is chairing, I should say, the SEND Improvement Board, which has been the main vehicle for overseeing our journey, our SEND journey over the past few years. Over to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. So if I may, I'll try and be brief, but I'll give a little bit of context to where you were leading into the inspection process and the nature of the intervention, and where you go from here, potentially, because my own involvement will cease now because of the positive news of your inspection. Just to remind members, I speak in this role on behalf of the Department for Education. I'm technically a government advisor on behalf of BCP, but with a slightly strengthened role because of the nature of concern. So you had a damaging CQC and Ofsted inspection of your SEND services in 2022, and that led to a formal government intervention which didn't involve myself. But because there had been a failure of progress in the first year or so of that intervention, the ante was upped by DfE, and I was introduced with SEND, having already been working with you on your social care improvement journey, and the government introduced the statutory direction, which is the most formal power that they can apply to local services in these circumstances. It's important to remember that what that meant was that BCP Council at that stage had a statutory direction for its social care services for children in need and a statutory direction for SEND services. I think only one other council in the country has ever been in that very parlous position. So you were in quite deep trouble, to put it bluntly. We worked, as you've mentioned, Chair, through particularly through a revamped local partnership. And at that point, it's really important to remember that effective SEND services are not local authority dependent entirely. They're dependent upon an effective partnership, in particular between the local authority, the local NHS, what I call the family of schools, and the parent-carer partnerships that work locally. The voice of parents and children being so important to the way in which you drive services forward. I won't go through all of the work that was involved in that. It was very difficult. I think we'd all acknowledge that. But I also think that through the course of the last 3 years, in particular, your local leadership grappled much more directly and strongly with the challenge of children's services generally and SEND in particular. And you achieved, amongst other things, a much more stable series of leaders in the service, in particular through children's services, but not only within children's services, and also, I have to say, politically as well, which makes a big difference to the challenges that are required to improve children's services in these circumstances. As you've mentioned, Chairman, you had your follow-up inspection in December of last year, and that was published in January. You've achieved the middle grading, which ironically enough describes your services as inconsistent, which is the parlous language of Ofsted, I'm afraid. But actually, if you were to read across the SEND framework, there are there are 3 outcomes, and you've got the middle one. But really, the middle grading in SEND terms encompasses all of RI and most of good in terms of what it represents. And although you've got that label now of inconsistent, that takes you out of the category, and you really were towards the good end of RI. You were on the right-hand side of that inconsistent judgment. And it was very notable, just anecdotally, the perspective of the inspectors who came geared up to do what inspectors do was very positive. And you'll see for yourselves the language of the published report is unusually strong, I think, particularly compared to the language of your previous reports. And as I say, that was down to very strong local leadership. You're not out of the woods because no system is. I was mindful of the question that you addressed at the beginning of this meeting, and I'll touch upon reforms in just a moment, but the very best SEND systems in the country are under tremendous duress still. And you don't have to look far in those systems to find parents or children who are unhappy with the way things are going and partners who are at odds with each other. It's a dynamic process, but you're now in a much stronger position than you were before. You've also got some formal areas where you've got to improve your services. That includes the provision and outcomes for SEND children, particularly SEMH, social, emotional and mental health needs. You've got to do more to publicise what's called the local offer, where people can gain access to understanding what services are available locally. And you've got to do more, and this is a very common challenge in all systems, because the waiting lists nationally are so long and complicated for children with neurodiversity. Most systems are now doing what you're doing, which is trying to wrap around early support during the waiting time. You're on that path, but you've got to do more of it. But I have to say, I do want to finish on the inspection content by stressing what a good report it is. Good with a small g rather than a capital G, if you see what I mean, those of you who are used to Ofsted's ways and means. For the future, like every SEND system, you're going into a period where there's reform on the cards. I noted, I don't want to get drawn into commenting on your behalf or to get into the argument about this, the very challenging question about people's concerns about the reforms as they're posted at the moment. And we're into a period of consultation at the moment, but many of the consultees have noted as well that the reforms are on a track, and they may well get amended, but I think that they are relatively well set, but some of them will be subject to parliamentary comment. And some of them will be difficult in those terms because of the challenges that were implied by the question. What I would say, though, nevertheless, is, and this is where you should be proud of what you've done, having been in a very difficult position 3 years ago, The SEND system nationally is as good as broken, in my opinion, having worked with other SEND systems as well. It must be reformed, and it can't be reformed with money alone. They're putting a lot of money in it, but the reforms do need to challenge the position that has been achieved since the last reforms in 2014, where the SEND population has more than doubled in formal terms, and it's a road to destruction for the whole of the service, really. And what that does include is a path which you've been on locally, and which I would stress is really important to your own local improvement journey, alongside the improved relationships between the NHS and the local authority, which are so important. But your school system 3 years ago felt relatively excluding, if I may put that in small terms. Not all schools and not the whole system, but you've got a relatively disparate school system. And I know you're working very hard, particularly through Lisa at the moment, to draw together a coherence of the school system, which is so important. But the reforms are based upon more inclusive services. And I think that will be a particular challenge in the BCP area. One, I get the sense that the schools are ready to grapple with, most of them, but some will need more support than others to come forward. Because if you don't do better at inclusion, you're going to carry on this treadmill of children being sent to places which look good on brochures, but aren't really doing them much help, and are costing the authorities a fortune. Speaking of the fortune, one of the other areas you've got to really be careful about as a system going forward is that you've carried one of the heaviest high needs block debts nationally, and we won't go into the detail of that too much. The reforms come forward with a strong, if slightly partial, solution to dealing with those high need blocks debts, which is a big relief, I'm sure, for your finance colleagues, but it's not an absolute solution. And you're still going to be in negotiation with DfE about what to do with that. And so I think that's going to be important going forward as well. And if I can answer questions on that, I'll do my best to do so. We're fairly confident that the government will relieve you of your statutory direction. I think that they should, but there's a process to be gone through with ministers about that. And you can understand how once achieved, having put in place a statutory direction, everybody wants really strong assurances alongside the outcome to the inspection as to where that goes next. So that's work further in process. Your area partnership has been working with an external chair. It doesn't really need an external chair now, in my opinion. We had what I think will be my last meeting yesterday. Your local leadership can grapple with that and do a really, really good job and work from the position of local determination and local discretion, which is the point of an intervention like mine. The point of my intervention is to get out, and we're achieving that now, and that's really, really positive. And I just reiterate again, what you've done, which is, if there was a single most important issue that you've done in the last 3 years on social care as well as on SEND, is you've brought children and families closer to the heart of the council, and you've put in place secure, strong local leadership. You've got to protect both of those features going forward, in my opinion, Chair. I'm very happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, John. That's very helpful laying out the landscape. And just to draw colleagues' attention to the fact we do have Mark Harris from NHS Dorset online. As John was very clear, and I'm sure we're all aware that the NHS is a major partner in everything that we do in this area. And so if there are any questions that need to go in his direction, or if Mark would equally like to say anything, I'm very happy for either of those to happen. Mark, please just do indicate if you did want to say anything. So it's now over to the committee for any questions. Michael.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Coughlin. I don't normally sit on this committee, so to get that very, very concise verbal report was amazing. It nailed a few things straight off. The third point you made about support during the waiting time for neurodiverse children, is there a more I know obviously our portfolio holders sitting here along with our leadership team, but what are the practical measures that we take to give this support during the waiting time for neurodiverse?
I'd actually think that's great to Mark on behalf of the NHS if he's happy to do that. Essentially, the principle is that you don't stand in a queue waiting for the support services that will come when you get to the end of that queue with your assessment and get an education, health and care plan. But that some of the obvious factors that have caused you to be in that queue will trigger some lower level forms of support and intervention while you're waiting, because one of the causes of the waits is the lack of professional staff in all areas. But Mark might indicate further what that looks like in practice.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so I suppose it is a real area of challenge for us across the conurbation, and we totally acknowledge the sort of number of people that are waiting for an assessment. One of the key pieces of work that we've been doing over the last year or so is to sort of really try and think about how do we move to much more of a needs-led approach. So rather than diagnosis being the sort of the be all of end of all, that actually we start to think about what are the presenting needs of our children and young people. We have got a sort of a what's been called a Nest D proof of concept, and that's more about a sort of a neurodiversity tool to sort of look at what the needs are of people, of young people, to sort of and putting a team together to be able to do that. So that's in its infancy at this moment, and we've got a pilot sort of process to go ahead, which should be starting next month, all going well with workforce recruitment. So that will start to sort of test out, and we'll be looking at taking people off the waiting list that are there to sort of make sure that they've got that support whilst they're waiting. I think the other thing to say really is alongside that shift towards a needs-led approach, we're also making strong efforts to try and grapple with those people that are waiting the longest as well. So we're putting extra resource in to bring down the number of longest waiters that are in our system within the BCP place as well. Hopefully that gives you some sense of where things are at, but it is a work in progress. And I think it's probably fair to say that, and John has kind of alluded to this, is that we do need some major transformation of our model of care, which will need significant investment and work across the partnership to bring that forward.
Lisa, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. To add to what Mark's saying, the other thing is that this challenge doesn't just sit with the health service, it sits with us and our family of schools as well. And so what we've been doing is working on our graduated approach toolkit, and we're co-producing that with our schools and our families. And in that, there will be clear advice and guidance for our SENCOs, for our heads, for our families, in terms of what the offer looks like that isn't about waiting for a diagnosis, and how schools can be upskilled to support children and young people at an earlier stage, whether they're waiting for a diagnosis or not. So I think that's really important.
Thank you. That last bit is really, I think, quite critical, and it ties in with the other point that John was making about publicising the local offer. So the graduated approach toolkit with SENCOs especially, and you know, I have an interest in SENCOs, historical one, but yeah, I do think that is quite key, and you know, quite interested to hear maybe if this committee has a look at this graduated toolkit in a bit more detail at some point in the future when it's ready to come out. That'd be great.
Sorry, Lisa. Yes, go back, please.
Thank you. So there will be some engagement sessions when we're ready to launch the toolkit, and councillors will all be invited to attend. There are a range of different sessions that you can attend to have a little viewing of the new graduated approach website. And we're at the early stages of the development of the local offer. So I mean very, very early stages. And the graduated approach and the local offer should work seamlessly together as well, which is important. We don't want people to feel like they're leaping from one to another, and we want to make sure that the health-related advice and guidance also sits really strongly connected to the local offer, so that again for families it all feels really connected.
Thank you. Patrick, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John, for your presentation. I just wanted to ask, in the inspection report, it seems to me that there is still quite a long list of things to do. And the forthcoming changes that we're about to see in terms of SEND reorganisation reform also will present us with quite a lot of other things to do. I guess what I'm asking really is, given the improvement journey that we've been describing, where are we? Is it more of the same? Is it something different? What other gear do we have to shift to in order to meet those challenges, if at all?
I think Kathy and Lisa might want to come on this. I think it's a very good question, because the reforms are positive, but they'll be challenging, and that's when they get confirmed. And meanwhile, we've touched upon social care in this conversation. There are substantial reforms going on in the social care world as well for children, which again are positive, but will be challenging to implement, and I think carry different kinds of risks with them about the focus on the children who need the highest level of protection. If I was to single out a single answer to your question, I would point to that issue to do with how do you support a stressed school system and stressed individual schools to become more inclusive. I've said some things which might be interpreted as quite critical of schools. I don't mean it as blunt criticism, because schools are working with a number of different pressures and agendas themselves, and with real resource concerns now as well. The challenge of being more inclusive and frankly also being able to answer the question that was put by the member of the Youth Parliament on the screen earlier, which I think is the bang-on question. How do you make sure that individual schools in a more atomised school system are giving consistent support to children who need it? I think that's the biggest thing to be looked at. I think you're in a position of strength, though, now, because of what you've been through for the last 2 years. Kathy or Lisa might want to say more.
I'll start, and I'm sure Lisa will want to put some meat on the flesh. Really, I think we're in a very good position. I think we have worked really hard to work on our improvement journey, which reflects where the reforms have been going. So I don't think it's we were on this improvement path and we've now got to deliver a completely different kind of set of reforms. I think they dovetail quite nicely in the work that we've been doing. We've been doing some really hard work with our schools in supporting them in terms of what might be the next step that they need to do. And we need to bring them along with us. We need to support them, and we need to build some real strong foundations with them. And from that then gives parents trust and confidence that the changes will be delivered, but their children will still receive the support that they need without an EHCP. And I guess that's the move forward with the reforms. So I think there are elements of the work that we have been that we are on the front foot, and I think there are elements of work that we've still got some more thinking to do. The reforms have come with a very tight timescale to deliver a very detailed plan by the 19th of June. And so at this moment in time, we're looking at how we're going to resource that. What are the things we might need to stop doing for a while so that we can actually produce that plan to move forward, which I guess then gives us the bones to make sure that we're actually we've got that as the blueprint for us all to work with, that's been written and signed up to by all partners across the system. I'm hoping Lisa will give you a few more details about the actual things that we've been doing with schools to put some meat on those bones.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up on the first bit first about it feels like there's still a lot to do. I would defy any local area to come out of a SEND inspection not feeling like there was still a lot to do. And if you read any report of a local area that got a 1, which is the top grading, it's exactly the same. And actually one of the comments that was made by another DfE advisor in our SEND board this week was that it's a testament to us, the fact that there were only 3 areas for improvement listed at the end of the report. So I think we should take heart in that fact, but no, we're not naive about how much there is still to do, of course.
But I think what gives me both confidence and hope is the fact that when I look at the reforms and when I was going through them, mapping what are we already doing in BCP against those reforms, it felt really heartening because there was far more in that column than the column that I had for have we got nothing against this? Have we not even started or thought about it? And just to give you a couple of examples, the reforms talk about the fact they want all local areas to introduce a 3-tier alternative provision model. We started our work on that quite some time ago. We're in the middle of co-producing that model already. And our schools are working really closely with us on that, and we're really excited about what that's going to be. And I think it's been, we've done that for BCP. We haven't done it because we thought it was going to come up in the reforms. We did it because we absolutely believed it was the right thing for BCP, because we know we have too many children going out into alternative provision and then that being their final destination. Another example would be the way that we use inclusion bases here. So the reforms have said that they fully support the use of inclusion bases. The language here prior was resource provision or resource bases. The reforms are asking all local areas to use the term inclusion bases, which is better and simpler actually. But here in BCP, we've been developing our use of inclusion bases for some time. A number of our primary schools already have them. A number more want to have them, and those are being developed at the moment. And then the really tricky bit is secondary schools. And in the reforms, it says that they would like to see all secondary schools having inclusion bases. And because we're already ahead of the game on this journey, we already have 9 of our secondary schools who are engaging in that conversation with us about wanting to have an inclusion base. Where when we started that journey on our phase 1 of introducing inclusion bases, there weren't any secondary schools. And I think that is testament to the journey we've been on with our family of schools and how well they are working with us to become a more inclusive system. So I think those are signs that bode really well for us. The fact that 50, and you've heard me say this before, but 50 of our school leaders immediately signed up to and are now on a year-long inclusion leadership course. These are school leaders who want to make these changes and want to work with us. Everything that we're introducing to our schools, we're doing in co-production, and we're not having to chase to have schools who will co-produce with us. All of our initiatives have schools working with us really closely. And I talked about the graduated approach. That's another really lovely example where we have a team of Senkos who are producing the content for this graduated approach. It's not us doing it and then telling them that's what they're supposed to do. We're going to the experts. I don't like that word. We're going to the practitioners in the schools who are there day in, day out, doing that work, and they're creating that material with us. So I think that should give us real heart and real hope about the direction of travel that BCP is on. Thank you very much. Is that okay? Thank you. Emily, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased what you were just talking about there, Lisa, and also the question you asked Patrick, because there was a real sort of tension between all that's been achieved and just what an effort that was, and then the reforms coming in and now what needs to be achieved on the back of that as well. And where my mind goes as a former teacher is staff and morale. And my goodness me, we've asked so much already of so many professionals. How on earth, and I know you touched on this just now, how on earth can we support those professionals to keep delivering so much, and they're already so burnt out? Teacher retention at the moment, support staff, we know it's so hard to recruit in that area. And I know this is not all down to BCP, but and I also appreciate, Kathy, you said, there's still so much more to do, but if there is any more you can give us to drill down a little bit more into how we can support our teachers at the moment when, as I said, we're asking so much of professionals who already have had so much asked of them.
Thank you. And I hear that from our school leaders at the moment. I hear how unsettled some staff are feeling with the pressure that's on them. And I think part of what we do really well now is we listen. We listen really carefully to our parent carers. We listen really carefully to our schools leaders and our school staff to make sure that we can course adjust and shift where we need to. So growing our outreach program is a good example of that, so that we can offer outreach from all of our special schools and our alternative provision schools as well, because that is a valued service by schools. So we're reviewing the whole of that program and strengthening it and making sure that there's enough capacity in there to be able to go out and support schools. Bringing on the trial that we're doing at the moment of our inclusion leads, and I'm fairly confident that that's a service that we're going to need and want to grow, so that schools aren't feeling that they have to wait until crisis point to get additional support, particularly around children or cohorts of children where the presenting behaviours are a challenge for the school staff. So I think those are the kind of things that we can do. And then, you know, I'm hopeful about the training that's going to be coming down the line from central government, although I'm also aware that you can't just bombard schools with lots and lots more training. And so it has to be more subtle and more nuanced than that. But that's, I guess that's what I would say for now.
If I may just come in briefly and off the back of Lisa's answer, I think Lisa's answer is fantastic, and it's correct, and it's really helpful, and it's sophisticated, and it's the basis of how the work needs to go forward. I'll almost play bad cop alongside Lisa's good cop in answer to that question. You're obviously absolutely right, and I completely echo your position with regard to the experience of individual staff members and how they've got to work with their classes and with their individual children. But I would step back just slightly in the context of, very quietly, the new revolution that Ofsted brought forward. Finally, I think it's been so long in coming, that schools are now inspected for their inclusive practices. It's such an important step. What I found positive in the journey of improvement over the last couple of years in BCP, from some fairly torrid conversations with head teachers, we moved into some more sophisticated conversations with head teachers who started asking each other about their relative school performance in inclusive terms. And you're carrying a system, or you were carrying a system, I haven't looked at it much more recently, of very, very stark contrasts around which schools will keep which children. And you need to foster, alongside the really important and sophisticated work that Lisa has described, and she is fostering this, I know she is, the conversations, the honest conversations between schools, which are about, why is that then? Because the staff of the school that's more inclusive are seemingly able to cope because of the way they're led and the way they're supported internally to work with children and hold on to children in the mainstream generally in ways that they should be. Whereas other schools, the staff seem less able to cope, or the schools seem less able to prepare them to cope. I'm being a bit confrontational with that, not to you, but to the school system. Those conversations must happen internally as this goes forward, I think.
Thank you for that, John. Elise, oh, sorry, Kathy, you wanted to come back in. I have another question after that.
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to recognise that as a local authority, we are the convener of the reforms of the partnership to develop how we go forward. And part of that role is how we support schools to become groups of schools to do exactly as John was kind of highlighting, in the fact of supporting each other to be able to deliver. So why is it working well in one school and maybe not in the other? How can they learn? And it's very clear in the reforms that we are the convener of some of that work to support schools to deliver that. And so that's the role we would take on.
It's all very exciting. So on that point about groups of schools, we're already working with our schools in taking them in that direction, and that concept of place-based civic leadership and taking the responsibility for that idea of cradle to career for young people, and not just being responsible for the part of the journey that that phase of school holds. And that fits really well with the Families First partnership work that you're going to hear about later this evening. So Kathy's absolutely right. That is really central to what we're doing. But may I also just throw in one more cheeky example for Patrick? So there are local government awards called the MJ Awards for Children's and Adult Services. And we felt that we had a really strong multi-agency early years service here. You've heard me speak before very positively, for example, about the Portage service. But the early years service broadly is a multi-agency service which helps to find hidden children and make sure they get the early support that they need. And so we put in for an MJ award, and we've been shortlisted as finalists, and we're in a week and a half's time presenting to the panel to see if we have a chance of winning. But just the fact of being finalists, I think, is something to celebrate. So, you know, we're on the up in BCP. We're on the up.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's great news to hear. Jeremy, you wanted to come in.
Thank you. Yes. I just wanted to ask about one of the other strands that's within the white paper about SEND provision, and it kind of ties in with morale of teachers. It ties in with the capacity of leadership to be able to actually have the space to develop the teams within their school, and that is parental complaints and their impact upon the leadership of schools. Parental complaints are increasing significantly in complexity as well with ChatGPT, which is being used significantly by parents. It means that the responses that schools get back are very, very fast, and the amount of time that is being sucked out of the ability of school leaders to actually focus on what's necessary within schools to develop their staff to meet the needs of children is alarming, really. And I think with what John said about the atomization of the school system and the fact that you know, there are lots of different multi-academy trusts around, what are we looking to, or are we in a position at the moment as BCP to be able to think about how we're able to support schools through that complaints journey to try and actually find, and complaints are important, particularly within SEND. Parents need to be able to raise their concerns, but I think that the balance has tipped too far the wrong way at the moment, and I think that there's an important role for the local authority to be able to play to support schools there. And I just wonder where that sits on your grid at the moment, Lisa.
So obviously each multi-academy trust has its own complaints procedures, and those have to be followed, and it wouldn't be appropriate for the local authority to step in the way of that unless there was evidence that we were required to provide as part of that complaints process. However, all schools are able to come to us for advice and guidance, and we will always give that. When complaints reach a level that they go through to Ofsted, those Ofsted complaints then come to us, and we investigate those very thoroughly. And one of the things that, in terms of advice and guidance, that we would give to our schools, whether they're within the maintained schools or in an academy trust or a single academy, is that as frustrating as it might feel sometimes and as time consuming as it may be, you should really always look at a complaint and think about what the learning is, and try and keep your ears open and your eyes open to that, because there's always some learning that can come from it. And that it's really, really important to continue to develop positive relationships with families, so that there are other recourses for families to use, and that they therefore don't need to get to the point of having to make a formal complaint, and that they feel able and safe and willing to be able to have conversations with the school. So I was in a school on a school visit today, and the head teacher talked about the fact that she has parent representatives for each year group, and she meets with those parent representatives every half term, and that is a really challenging space for her to have to go into, but that she's absolutely determined that it's the right thing to do to give those parent representatives the opportunity to bring forward things that parents are concerned about so that they can be addressed in that way rather than through that formal complaints procedure. And I absolutely think that it is the brave and the right way to go about things. Thank you very much. I can't see any other indications, so I'll wrap that up. John, if this is the last time we see you, thank you very much for the work that you have done and the information that you have consistently brought very clearly to this committee. I'm getting a counter. I'm so sorry. You want to? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the work that you have done with this council.
Because that's been part of the process of progress.
Thank you very much. Oh, Pearl, I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you to John and to the team, and we've definitely seen changes since. So I got involved with being the parent rep from the 2021 Ofsted damaging report, as you said, and they said, we'll give it 18 months to see, you know. I said, okay, well, I'll give it 18 months, and 5 years later, I'm still here. So what I mean is we have seen a culture change. We have seen it going in the right direction. There's still loads of work to do, but from the parent carer perspective, you are bringing us in to the room. You are giving us the opportunity to be involved. So I just want to say thank you.
Councillor Burton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to take the opportunity to add my thanks as well. It's been really interesting watching you chair meetings. Your support, your candour, the way that you can be frustrated and cross without ever being angry, which is fascinating. So yeah, and challenging without being personally challenging, which is really well noted in the meeting. So yeah, it's been, yeah. I don't know if this is the last time you're going to be down in BCP. It's
I'll be doing one or two less formal meetings, but this is
yeah. It's been, you know, personally it's been great. I've learned a lot watching you chair meetings and seeing and you have been part of the team, which has been appreciated. Yeah, I was going to say, if you want a reference, you know, there's...
Thank you very much. Yes, but of course we are actually quite happy that in terms of this council you are now, well, hopefully soon out of a job, as it were. So moving on, I'm turning to Juliet, who has apologised for not being with us in the room this evening, but isn't feeling great. But she is bringing us the Families First partnership programme. And this is a first for me. This is a presentation that I have allowed to the committee. So Juliet, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just confirm you can see the screen?
Not yet, Juliet. We can still see you.
See how this works. Bear with me. Technical issues.
Can we assist you at all, Juliet?
I'm just trying to get the presentation up, so I'm just going into a different screen to see if I can get it. Okay. This one. Okay, second time, I'll try. Hopefully it will
That looks
come up.
promising. Yes, there we go. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So just to explain a little bit about this, hopefully. Families First is part of a considerable change in terms of reforms for children's social care, but also for our partners. It involves around multi-agency working together. And it's probably the first time for the good part of 20 years where I would say our government departments are also working together to bring a system back together to move forward in relation to children. So that's a massive positive. It concentrates very much on early help prevention and family group decision making. So putting families back at the centre of experts in their own families to move forward, and hopefully to also have the buy-in and the progress that is needed within those families for them to become resilient and stand on their own 2 feet, which is what we all want. It also concentrates on a new multi-agency child protection team, which I'll go into slightly later on. And it creates capacity within our system by enabling not just social workers to work with families, but also alternatively qualified practitioners who may come from a range of different backgrounds and therefore bring skills into the system to help us work with children and families. The key part of it is that it's overseen by a clear governance system, data and intelligence, and in BCP, we're going to use a strategic Families First partnership board, which will help us agree together a way forward. And because it's now a multidisciplinary and a multi-agency setting in terms of how we deliver work, it's really key that our supervisions and our management oversight is at the forefront of what we do. And that's part of how we ensure that we keep the safety. We've talked already today about the amount of reforms that are happening and the amount of change. So all of that around the data, the intelligence, the management oversight, the supervisions are part of the way that we ensure that it stays safe whilst we make these changes. We're in regular.
Juliet, just
yes?
a moment. Your PowerPoint presentation is not moving on for us. We're still on the first slide.
That's fine. It won't need to just yet.
Just wanted to check. Sorry, we
Yeah,
just wanted to check.
In terms of the DFE, I've met with them today. We have regular meetings with them, and that's the update in terms of where we are. So this year has been all about the implementation plan, so how we're going to move forward. And from April 2026, we're into the delivery period. So what we're actually doing on the ground, so to speak, in terms of delivering this new way of working. Okay, so this slide you can now see on the screen, this brings together where the money is coming from. So we have different grants. What's happening is those grants are combining into one to deliver a full system to children. So that's the top blue line.
Juliet, it hasn't moved. I'm so sorry, it hasn't moved.
Have you got Families First Partnership Programme on the screen?
No, we've still got your opening slide.
Oh, bless you. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Is it moving now?
Yes, now it's moving. Thank you.
Okay, so that first screen here, that shows you the different policies that have come together and are allowing this to work. So just what I've talked through, how we're going to bring it together to deliver earlier and deliver better. The grants for BCP itself, you can see on this screen, hopefully, which is there's 2 main grants. Next year, through the delivery, it will become one homogenous grant. But there's various things that we must deliver from that money, and that's laid out. So it's pretty much ring fenced. It's very clear about we can use it for transformation, we can use it for early help, we can use it for prevention work, family group decision making, etc. So we've got just over, it's about 2.5 million for that delivery. In terms of this slide, it might be quite helpful. We've talked a lot about reforms today. There are various reforms in various places, and they all sort of come together. So that green bubble in the middle is how these various reforms work together to drive us forward. So improved outcomes for children is absolutely key to all of the reforms. Service efficiencies, how we concentrate the work at that earlier stage, so the preventative stage rather than the crisis-led stage, which many public services have almost been pushed into due to just how the system has evolved over many years. And how we empower our families again, children and families. So absolutely listening to their voice, putting them at the forefront of what we do, making sure they're part of any improvements or changes we make within the system, and therefore how we work together across a whole system. And you can see some of the key terms, and some of the committee will have already heard things like Best Start, Family Hubs, a Best Start in Life, the 10-year NHS reforms, housing reforms also, but the one that isn't on here yet is police reforms, and I think they were published last week. So there's plenty of reforms around, but if you look at it, it's quite overwhelming to think of all of the different ones, but if you look at it together, they all have a very similar message in terms of how we move forward. This diagram is a DFE diagram, and it shows the system that was set up for social care, which was on the left-hand side of this system here. It shows you how you first enter into a children's services or social care system, and that's our low-end support that may be needed. And some of it starts in the universal world, so health visitors, school nurses, GPs, etc. And it progresses as the needs progress into a higher end need of support and help, and sometimes intervention. And in this space here, the Families First is bringing together a lot of our work that we do. You'll have heard of targeted intervention, so the work that we do, sort of higher end early help system, and our children in need, which is the statutory part. So a lot of the work is about combining those two areas together, and we call that now family help. So it's a mixture of the non-statutory and the statutory, but actually how we work best with the family. And the drive behind it is to make sure that the families, the children and families themselves, have one journey, and they're not passed into different parts of a system to have the needs met, but actually we adjust our system to meet the needs of the family, so it's more holistic than has been seen before. The statutory requirements haven't changed. We still have child protection, which is up this end. We still have children in care. Those remain. But the biggest change is in this area here. Let me see if we can move. Okay, so there are 5 pillars in terms of how we're making the changes. Early help, we've been delivering on early help since 2022-23. And we created a new system there. So we have clear pathways, we have a multi-agency pulling together our services so that we can deliver best for our children and families. That's really successful, but there's further work to do in that space to help us measure it, and also to ensure that our early help assessments are used across the whole system and not just pockets within the system. The next part of the system will be the front door. So Mark's with us today, and very much bringing health into that space. Police are in the space already, but how we grow the front door parts, and we want to move away from criteria. You don't meet criteria, therefore you need to phone a different number, in the flippant terms, and actually move into the conversation part. So actually, what is it a family or a young person needs? How do we help ensure that that's delivered, even if not by ourselves? How do we make sure that child and family get to the right part of the system, rather than, they don't meet criteria, therefore they need to phone a different number, which isn't good use of anybody's resource or time. So it will become, I think, a lot more holistic in terms of how we approach families. The family help part, which I've mentioned, alternatively qualified practitioners will start to operate within that part of the system alongside qualified social workers. So we still deliver on the statutory roles, but we do so in a much more fluid way than we've done before. Multi-agency child protection teams is what it says on the tin. It's a new way of dealing with child protection, much more multi-agency in terms of how it evolves. We've talked to Dorset about this because we share partners in terms of health and police, and we want the multi-agency child protection team to be a decision-making team that will sit at the front door and make decisions around safeguarding at that point. And then it branches into different areas, which I won't go into too much detail because it can be quite overwhelming in terms of complex system. And the last work stream that we have is around our family group decision making. So how we best work with families to help them make decisions about their family to move them forward, while still being very clear about what our concerns are, what the risks are, what the needs are. And we already have ideas and we're moving forward with that. But we're going to make it very much bespoke to BCP and the needs within BCP through that. And let me just go, I think there's one more slide. In terms of how we do this. So we have a clear governance, which I've mentioned. Everything we're doing is based on evidence and research. So we're not just gone off on a whim. We're actually thinking about what works and what we know to work really well. And then we're adjusting that to meet the demand and the needs within BCP and make sure it works for ourselves, our partners, our children and families, and our staff. Communication, absolutely key. How do we involve everybody in this space? And you'll see a lot more of that this year coming as we start to deliver some of this and also evolve some of the ideas we have moving forward. And you can see through all of this, it's about learning, adjusting, reevaluating, and actually doing what we need to do as we evolve the whole system. So it's quite an exciting space. You've probably heard already some of the anxieties around so much change. I think this absolutely pulls together various agencies and various responsibilities. And I think there's a really strong cohesion here to get this right. The challenge will always be how quickly we can get it to work the way we want it to work. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone.
Thank you very much, Juliet. That was extremely helpful. I have some questions, but I'm going to see if anybody else has any questions. Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, where it says in family help pilot team, introduction of alternatively qualified family help workers working alongside qualified. Can you explain alternatively qualified?
Yes, of course I can. So we have qualified social workers since about 2008. I'm going to say the rules, it's easy way of saying it. The rules were that any statutory work must be carried out by qualified social workers. Prior to that time, actually, we used family support workers and qualified social workers to undertake, say, child in need work, etc. So alternatively qualified means that they are qualified in other ways. So it might be through experience, it may be through other qualifications such as health qualifications, police qualifications, probation qualifications, etc., to work with families, rather than a qualified social worker status, which is a legally protected term in itself.
Thank you. That was one of my questions. Patrick.
Thank you. I wanted to just ask a question about public health, which probably will come as no surprise to the chair. But the shift towards earlier intervention is obviously absolutely critical, really, really, really important. My question about the impact on public health and the involvement of public health is how are we going to measure it? How are we going to measure those outcomes? How are we going to know that this has made the difference that we wanted to make?
Thank you. So I would say that the first thing to start with is that public health has always been heavily involved in our prevention stage. That they use their grants to help fund our early help work and preventative work that we already have in place. So that is a really strong partnership within BCP and will continue to be that strong partnership. In terms of measuring, so we also have Best Start in Life in the family hubs now, Best Start family hubs. And actually what we're doing together as a partnership is looking at what we have to report back to DFE is around the GLD. So Lisa might have to tell me out because it's going to go from my head. Good level of development. and that's about having children school ready at 5. However, to get to there, there's lots that we have to do between 0 and 5. So what we're doing as a partnership is looking together to say, what is it that we want to measure going forward? And it will be the Early Help Strategic Partnership that decides together what we're going to look at, what we're going to measure, and how we move forward. But alongside that, we already have a number of measurements we already have, because we've had family hubs for a while. So those will continue to be measured. And what we're doing now is making sure that's automated so we can see it and use it the way we use any other performance data within children. So again, I think it's an exciting space to be in, including for our public health colleagues.
Thank you. I've also now got Jeremy indicating.
Thank you, Juliet. This might be still a work in progress, possibly, but I'm interested in your discussion about moving away from criteria, because at the moment, if you're working in schools, if you're working in early help, you're working in social care, the most commonly used term is doesn't meet threshold. And we're talking about a continuum of need, and unless there are forms of criteria, then how are we going to actually understand where people sit within that continuum? And what are our thoughts on how that process can happen so that we don't ultimately end up just defaulting back to saying, well, you haven't quite met the criteria to be within the family help yet?
Can I just jump in? Because one of my questions was about actually, have we got that agreed threshold across all the different areas? As I understood it, we need to agree a threshold essentially. So are we there?
So a few things. First thing is we've always had a threshold and a continuum of need, and that was Pan Dorset agreed. I would say it needs to be revisited given how BCP now functions and where we are. And again, that will have to be in a partnership. The threshold of need will remain, because you have to have a level of where it works and who works with children and families. And that absolutely is right that we do that, because if we don't do that, you end up with some part of a system getting clogged or toppling because of the pressures. However, what will disappear is the criteria part, which is doesn't meet our criteria, you need to phone, this different number to get a service. That's not helpful. And if you look at some of the research, and again, I said most of it, if not all of it's going to be evidence and research based. But we know, for instance, that the children and the families who are phoning CAMS are also phoning our front door in terms of social care, probably also knocking on the door of schools because they're not getting the needs met. So it's very much now about having the conversation around the needs rather than the conversation around whether or not it meets our criteria. And the result of that will be, I think, a much more efficient and effective system, rather than we'll ring them over there and then they might go, well, actually, we can't answer that. We don't have criteria, ring them. And what we have is a family usually at crisis point who may get passed from pillar to post and back again, just trying to find an answer. If you have I call it a call of kindness. If you have a call of kindness where somebody phones, whether it's a school or a family or other, have that conversation with kindness, and actually allow us to do the groundwork and running around to try and work out how we help that family rather than passing to a different number or a different agency. That will really help. And that's part of the reason we're bringing the CAMS into the front door, but also our health colleagues into the front door, to really start to create a holistic system that works for all of us. And Dorset, who are further ahead because they were Pathfinder, they found it, I think it was 30% of the calls coming in through CAMS, for instance, were also coming in through all of the other agencies. So in theory, if you get this right at the front door, you could reduce you could make I'll say the effectiveness, you can make it 30% more effective in terms of how we deliver to our children and families.
Thank you. I think Sandra wants to come in on the back of that, and then I've got Toby.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, Juliet, that encapsulates the say it once phrase.
Yeah, it does. And the other thing we're working with our colleagues internally and externally at the moment, Sandra. So what we've looked at is the conversations. So adults, I think it's called 3 conversations. So that's what adults are using. So we're having conversations with adults around how does that work? What does that look like? Could we use that in children's? Because again, that will create a system that is seamless between children and adults, but also then our partners within that too. And again, it seems like um, a much more kind way of trying to work with children and families than a criteria-led way.
Thanks. Juliet, do we know what success looks like in, say, 6 and 12 months' time? Maybe not so much programme activity, but are there hard measures?
I think there's different ways you can measure success, and that's a really, really good question. So in terms of our data is really, really good now, really, really strong. I would say if you have a conversation with some of the parents who, or professionals, but let's go parents. So parents who have tried to navigate a system that has various broken parts within the system, which some of those have been mentioned today, that I can imagine the frustration and that almost sense of helplessness that you can't get to what you need to get to and you can't find the answers that you're looking for. Whereas actually, if you create a much more holistic system, then I would like to think that what will happen is the lived experiences for our families and our children improves. And actually, it's about how people feel. But our data is there. Our data is really strong. That that speaks for itself. I think this is about more than data. This is about how people perceive the system and how it works for them.
And on the subject of data, I just wondered, are we confident that we've got everything in place for effective data sharing across all the organisations that are going to be involved?
It depends which area you're looking at. So yes, a lot of it, yes, because a lot of it's statutory and we've got that data already and we're a strong system and a good system in terms of our data. The parts that will be less strong at the moment will be things like when we bring everybody into the front door, how we measure each other. So whilst the local authority have to lead this, what you'll find is health still have their statutory duties they must deliver to. So what we have to make sure within that front door is that everybody is still able to measure their own performance, their own practice, and deliver against that. It's not a case that the local authority does all of this. We almost become the conduit to make it happen and pull it together, but we have to continue to do that. And if you also look at Best Start in Life and Best Start Family Hubs, that's another area that absolutely we're moving forward in the right direction. Is it mature yet? Absolutely not. Have we got all the measurements we need? Not yet. But I think that's the joys of an evolving system as we start to cohese, I can't think of the word, but bring it all back together again, and actually make it stronger. So I'd say in some areas yes, in some areas no, but absolutely moving in the right direction to get that all embedded.
Thank you. And yes, and I wanted to just kind of check in, really. I suppose it's a little bit like with the send conversation earlier about the fact that we're sort of in the right direction of travel. Is how much of a leap, if you like, is this for us? Or are we kind of, 2/3 of the way there? Are we 90% there? Are we, are we doing a lot of this anyway? Were we kind of thinking along the same lines? How much of it is in place? Whether it's we may call them something else, but like family help lead practitioners or the multi-agency child protection. I know we already had a version of that, but is this a big change for us, or is this a relatively smooth transition?
Again, because it's such a complex and a big system, there are bits that we probably do already, and we're tweaking it to make it work. There's other bits that are completely new, and it's about how we embed that. So if you think alternatively qualified practitioners, yes, we've always had family support workers. However, how we use family support workers is very different, i.e. they don't hold children and need children. They don't carry out assessments. We're moving to a system where alternatively qualified will be treated as family help practitioners, the same as a qualified social worker is a family help practitioner. So we've got to build their skills. We've set up a program of how we train our staff, all of our staff, to deliver within that system. So some of that is quite new, but it's not that we haven't had alternatively qualified, it's just how we use them will be slightly different. We've always had family group decision making. However, has that been strong enough, and has it been consistent use? not necessarily. So again, it's strengthening that, but it's also about how we want to deliver it. So rather than having a family network meeting, which we currently use, we now want to combine that with some more formal routes, just to make it stronger. So I suppose some of it is building on what we've already got. Some of it will be new. Multi-agency child protection teams is new, but how we're going to do it will be deliver at the front door. So what the DfE and the government have given us is quite a lot of freedom and scope to deliver it in the best way for local children. And I think that's key for me, is that we've got to get something that works for BCP. This isn't a pull it off the shelf and it will work for here. It's how do we make it work within our current system with some of our strengths, but also some of the challenges that we currently face.
And Pearl wants to come in at that point.
Hi, Juliet. Thank you. That was really good. My question is about the way we live has changed since COVID, especially. We are not accessing, parents are not accessing family hubs like they used to before. Whereas my own experience, just going to the family hub on a certain day because it was stay and play, I feel like that's gone away a bit. And is there anything in here that recognises the challenge of bringing those parents to that front door that you're talking about? Because I feel we're living in a slightly different world now, and where we're not regularly going to these community spaces, if you like.
It's a really good question, Pearl. So the family hubs is clearly set up nationally, and that's we used to have children's centres. We have had Sure Start before that. We've now got family hubs. I think the key for me is that you make things from a family hub meaningful and useful for a family, then a family will access. There's also virtual family hubs, they exist, but also remember family hubs is part of an early help system. So it's not just about the family hub, that's one element of it, but you have schools, which are also part of an early help system, churches, synagogues, mosques, all part of an early help system, GP surgeries are early help system. So it's how we use that universal system, because families may not access a family hub, but they may be taking the child into school or primary school every day. How do we utilize the facilities that we have that parents are willing or able to get to or use in the best way possible? And that's how I think when you look at maturing the system, that's part of the maturity of the system. How do we make sure that we're leaning over and that we're reaching children and families rather than expecting children and families to fit into a shoehorn, fit in a box that we've created. We need the system to be completely flexible to work with it, children and families in the best way possible.
Thank you. I haven't got any more indications. So we're asked as a committee to note the contents of the report, but also to, and I do need to ask actually, I'm not completely sure what's required by this, but consider the implications and impact for safeguarding practice for children's services and partner agencies. So Julia, I must confess, I'm not completely sure what the meaning of that is for us as a committee. If you could perhaps just help us out with that I would appreciate it, please.
Well, it might have changed the landscape slightly, because at the moment the multi-agency child protection teams are still going through House of Lords. House of Lords had some questions around it because this is quite fluid. The questions were around the evidence and the research for making the changes that are identified as being needed. So that currently we're waiting whether or not that will be agreed, and the government have provided further evidence to the House of Lords in order to get that agreement to move forward. So that's slightly different. In terms of ourselves, it's the multi-agency elements of this. So for safeguarding purposes, it is quite a different landscape. At the moment, we have traditional social care teams who do child protection. So any child who's subject to child protection, a social worker goes and does the visits, and it's all statutory recorded. In this world, the new world, it's a multi-agency child protection team who make the decisions. So it's no longer just a social care team. It will be a multi-agency setup. And that's quite different. I think what I'd want to do for a committee is give assurances that we will continue to monitor and we will continue to report on our data around child protection so that we will say if there's any change by a change in how we deliver the service, because obviously our job is to make sure children are safe within it.
So that actually brings me to my other point around, as it were, what this committee can do, which is we obviously need to see this come back. And what's the reporting line for this? How will this report?
I think you've got various elements of this. Probably what I'd suggest, Chair, is that there's just an update, some sort of update on FFP and multi-issue child protection teams. Bear in mind that the delivery starts on the 1st of April. So we've got a pilot family help team, which is starting. And I think it may be helpful for a committee to hear about the developments, and because that's going to evolve over the next year. So anytime, I would say after about 8 months, where you'll have a really good sense of what that looks like within BCP, how it's delivering, what changes we may have had to make, and whether there's been any impact on performance or just performance, to be honest, KPIs might be really helpful for the committee to see.
Thank you. So in that case, we have the two recommendations in front of us, and also an action from this is to add this essentially to our work plan could also be a recommendation to the committee, from the committee. Perhaps in November of this year, we'd have to see what that what that looks like in terms of other things that may be coming back then as well. But say by January of 27 at the latest. Is what I'm going to propose to the committee. So on that basis, unless anybody has anything they wish to add on that, can we agree the recommendations and also the additional one that I've just outlined in terms of the work plan? Thank you. Thank you very much. Juliet, I know you don't feel well, so thank you very much for taking us through that. And Sarah, thank you also for being here. Right. That then takes us to our last item of substantive business, which is the Children in Care Baseline of Needs, Spend and Overspend, the key lines of inquiry paper that the committee submitted. Now, this report does contain information that cannot be shared publicly. And although I'm always very, very loath to take any sort of scrutiny committee into private session, I'm afraid that is what is required for this item. We will be returning afterwards to a public session, but after that we have just items for information and the work plan. And the reason I say that is that for any members here at the moment who aren't able to continue, it may be an opportunity to go home rather than come back, but that is obviously your choice. We could also take a short break at this point if we wanted. Yes, would that be okay? In that case, what we will do is we will come back to that resolution when we return. We'll come back in 10 minutes, so that will be. We'll come back. If we aim for 8 o'clock, we won't hit it, and it'll be 5 past. But let's aim for 8. Thank you. So yes, we'll take a short break. Thank you very much. So, as I was saying just before we went for our break, the next item unfortunately requires the exclusion of the public. And to that end, I have to read the following resolution. That under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 2 in part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information. And we have to agree that that is, in fact, the position that this committee holds. Is everybody in agreement with that? Thank you. In that case, we will stop the live feed. Thank you and welcome back. Thank you for bearing with us if you are still listening in or watching. So we now at our items for information. They are information only, but I am just going to check that nobody has anything against them that they wish to ask or comment on just while we're here. No. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, so we have the SEND inspection report, which obviously we did really cover earlier with John Coughlin. But if anybody has anything on that, no, thank you. And then we have the childcare sufficiency assessment. I'm guessing that's what you want to raise something on. Can it be quick? Is that possible?
Well, perhaps it might be better if I correspond with the appropriate officer directly about the references in that report to my ward of Boscombe West.
Okay, I don't in any way wish to curtail debate, but if it is something that could be done, particularly if it's a ward-based thing, if it could be done by correspondence, as it's an item for information, that would be appreciated. Thank you. And now we have the portfolio holders update. Councillor Burton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's going to be slightly dynamic because quite a few things I had in here actually have been already discussed and covered. So please excuse me if I sort of get it slightly confused, because I'm going to try to cut a few things out. I mean, I did want to mention the All Councillor briefing on the 11th of February, which you kindly hosted, and I want to thank you for that, and Lisa for her presentation. 14 councillors attended, and I'm hoping a lot more watched later in the catch up. Now, I'm saying that because I personally was slightly disappointed that there weren't more councillors there. You know, when you look at the amount of interest in this room tonight, which I'm really, really pleased about. You know, I would just ask that if anybody does have influence with the councillors, because, you know, with the SEND bit being so important to the local authority, you know, encouraging other councillors to come to those things, I would be grateful to everybody here. We also talked about the Ofsted CQC report, which we discussed. I would say the thing that I'm most pleased about that is it demonstrates that we know the SEND service that we've got now. I would say that to a certain extent you could feel quite celebratory about it, but I deliberately haven't been, because I thought that was disingenuous to some of the families who still aren't getting a good service, because it does say inconsistent. Therefore, you know, I'm really pleased with what's happened, but I do know we've still got places to go. We've mentioned that the hustings event for Youth Parliament, that's already been mentioned, and we've also mentioned that the results will be announced at the celebration on the 21st of March at the Life Centre in Winton. Unfortunately, there's a Mayor of Bournemouth Civic Service that clashes with it, which I was disappointed to see that it had. I'm disappointed for the Mayor, actually, not because I know more people are going to be at it, but don't tell the Mayor that I said that, will we? Something else that we went to the head teachers forum where there was some very interesting input on inclusion, discussions about shared data. I would also ask, you know, if you ever, you know, at schools meeting head teachers, your governors of this sort of thing, I'll be really interested in any feedback that you can get from head teachers about these sort of events, and also any head teachers that you talk to who don't manage to go to them, see if you can find out why and feed that back, because it will be great to get more. We've talked about the school's white paper, so I shan't mention that, although I would say I did give you a lesson on spring, didn't I, a little while ago, and the white paper was actually published midwinter, which was really I was pleasantly surprised about. Yeah. When I'm wrong, I admit I'm wrong. It's, you know, it was well before spring. So yeah, I shan't go the winter artist content and that sort of thing. But I would say though, we've now got the documentation that goes with it. Start of the response, we had a SEND summit last week where the partners worked on the maturity matrix, which is now completed and draft. I would highlight there's a huge amount of work to be done before June to make sure the deadline is met for BCP. We can't afford to miss the deadline, and we can't afford for it not to be agreed by the DfE. Because if we do miss the deadline, or if it's not agreed, of course, we risk that 90%. Even, and I do hear that, okay, if there is a problem, it will be relooked at later, but it will be later, and we can't afford to be paying the interest on that amount of money, even if it takes a few more months. So what I would say is that the team that we've got of having to design a new system in BCP that aligned with the long-term reforms while still running the service of the existing system using what we have in place now. So it's a big job, it's a big ask. So I just wanted to highlight that, and anything that you could do to, we've got to think about the team, let them get on with their work. So, sometimes maybe pause a question, maybe just to give them that space to complete the work they've got to do. I've got here one thing on my mind is regional fostering hubs, but I think we've covered that already in the meeting. The only other thing I say, you like to hear about the visits I've had. I've done 2 school visits. It hasn't been very long since the last meeting. I visited Caulfield School, which was fascinating because for me, that was the first school I ever taught at. That's my first real job. And so going back there, it was fascinating. And St Oldham, that's also where I met my wife, but and St Oldham School I also went to. I've got some more visits coming up, which I'll tell you about later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments for the portfolio holder for Richard? No, I just wanted to add that I went to see the opening of Dingley's Promise in Somerford last week, and it was really wonderful. I have to say, great use of a building, an old building that's been completely done up by BCP, and the facilities in there looked incredible. I know that they've opened other provision at Somerford Primary as well, and they were bursting with pride about that. I spoke to the head teacher of Somerford Primary, and it was really good to see that close working with the schools, the council, the estates team of the council. All the bits seem to sort of work together as they should, and all the people who'd done the renovation work, they came as well. They were so proud of their work. It was great for them to see how it sort of ended up. And yeah, it was exactly what we want to see a lot more of.
I could just ask, I saw that it was there. I was very jealous because I really wanted to be there.
Yeah.
I went to the pool one. I was up at LGA eventing up in Coventry, but I know they're so good, and I'm sure I'll get to visit some point.
Any other comments or questions? Right. In that case, I'm just on the wrong piece of paper. The only thing we have left is the work plan, and I'm going to hand over to Sinead to give you an update because we did our work planning meeting, so we have something on that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be as quick as I can. So as members will be aware, we had our work planning workshop since our last meeting where the priorities for the year ahead were agreed. So I just wanted to provide a brief update. Officers are currently reviewing those priorities that were agreed in the session to determine the most appropriate timetable for each item. And once this work is complete, a finalised work plan will be shared with the committee and published with the agenda for the next meeting. But I did just want to confirm, as during the workshop, the Chair also proposed a refreshed lens for the Children's Services Open Scrutiny Committee of nurturing children, young people and families. The purpose of agreeing a lens is to provide greater focus to how ONS intends to approach its work and bring value through its scrutiny. So as not all members attended that workshop, I just wanted to confirm that everybody is happy to go forward with that lens, and we can get it agreed at committee.
Thank you very much. Is everyone happy with that lens? Thank you. So in conclusion, I just wanted to also, we heard earlier about the portage service being put forward for that, the MJ Awards. I would just like to congratulate them on that, and it'd be good to find out what happens in the fullness of time. One thing I did forget to mention was there are some actions that have been completed. Can I just have the agreement of the committee that those can be removed if they've been completed, the ones on the action sheet? I can outline which ones they are if you really want me to, but it will be obvious. And in that case, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Thank you very much for your patience.